Hey there. I'm excited to announce this to you today. This is what you've been waiting for in your spiritual quest. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time, and I'm finally ready to announce it that it's ready to go. It's the Grief to Growth Community Circle. Now, this is a sanctuary where like-minded souls are united in their journey through grief and towards personal transformation. It's more than just a place. It's a beginning. It's a commitment to growth and understanding. Here you're finding not just a community, but you're entering a circle of trust and depth. You're going to engage with interactive coursework. You'll dive into exclusive podcast episodes and partake in discussions that illuminate the path from mourning to empowerment. This is a realm where every question is honored and every individual's journey is validated. To be part of this exclusive circle, visit us at grieftogrowth.com/community or look for the chat icon at the bottom of every page on the main website. Remember that entry is a privilege because I want to ensure that every member is as dedicated and genuine as you are. You must apply to join, but the journey within is worth every step. So go ahead and join us today. Check it out, grieftogrowth.com/community, and I look forward to seeing you there. Today's episode features one of my fellow Shining Light parents, Camille Dan. Camille is a member of Helping Parents Heal. That's where I met her. Her son, Aaron, transitioned a couple of years ago. Camille's had a career as a nurse. She's also in financial management. And Camille has written 2 books, actually 3 books since Aaron's transition. A really fascinating story about how she started communicating with her son after he made his transition into the spirit world. So make sure you stick around and hear some of the insights from Aaron and hear about the great resource this book, Gathering at the Door, is. Hope you enjoyed the episode.
Hi there. Welcome to Grief to Growth podcast. Your host is Brian Smith, spiritual seeker, best-selling author, grief survivor, and life coach. Brian believes that the worst tragedies of life provide the greatest opportunity for growth. Brian says he was planted, not buried, and he is here to help you grow where you've been planted by the difficulties in life. In each episode, Brian and his guests will share what has helped them to survive and thrive. It is his sincere hope this episode helps you today.
Hey everybody, this is Brian back with another episode of Grief to Growth. And today I've got with me Camille Dan. Camille is the mother of 4. Her eldest son, Aaron, transitioned to his afterlife in September 2019. Camille's prior experiences as a critical care nurse and a medical consultant for feature films and TV. She's currently a private investment manager, and she's a self-published author of Aaron's Energy, An Unexpected Journey Through Grief in the Afterlife with My Brilliant Son, first and second editions. And she's the author of the newly released book, Gathering at the Doorway. It's an anthology of signs, visits, and messages from the afterlife. And my story of Shane is actually featured in that book. All the earnings from Camille's book sales go to mental health and addiction programs, bereavement support services, afterlife communication research, youth and young adult social development programs, Helping Parents Heal, Forever Family Foundation, and more. So she gives all this back to these very worthy charities. She's also published in a chapter of Chicken Soup for the Soul, Grieving, Loss, and Healing by Amy Newmark, and The Beauty of a Grieving Mother by Ellie Scheikat. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name. Camille's appeared on radio, podcasts, and YouTube shows around the world, and today she joins me.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for having me. It's a real honor to be on your show.
Camille, I'm really glad to have you here. We've known each other for a little while now. We got to know each other a little better through the Gathering at the Doorway project that you work on, which we'll get to talk about later. But whenever I have someone on who's the parent of a child in spirit, I always like to start out by letting you talk about your son. So tell me about Aaron.
Well, Aaron truly is a brilliant person, and right from birth, I could see he was unique and ahead of expectations. So in my first book, I refer to Aaron as my brilliant son because of his brilliance in life and also brilliance as a shining light from his afterlife. He's a brilliant light for me and continues to be. I always found right from an early age that Aaron was teaching me. As a parent, he's my firstborn. And as a parent, you think you're going to teach everything to your child. You don't realize how much they actually teach you about life. and love. And from a very early age, Aaron was doing things and saying things that, you would expect a much older child, even an old person, to come out with. He was charitable. He gave some coins that fell out of my pocket. He was under 3 years old, and he picked them up and took them to school and gave them to his classmates. And I found that out when the principal called, and I thought, oh no, a kid choked on one of the coins. Mm-hmm. And she said, no, you won't believe. Aaron gave each of his classmates a coin and told them to put it in the charity box. Wow. He was under 3 years old, and just his compassion for others, his kind heart and generosity just was evident from that early an age, and continued and still continues. And it's really Aaron who guided me to write these books and to give the money from the sales of the books to charities. And those charities are in his memory and in his honor, and charities that I believe he would have given to, and he's guiding me to do it for him.
Yeah. So tell me more about his life when he was here.
So Aaron, he was very creative. He was a great older brother. He really doted on his younger siblings. I have 3 others, 2 boys and a girl. And he was very involved in their lives. He took it upon himself, the responsibility upon himself as their big brother, to guide them and to make sure they were all okay. In his teens, Aaron struggled with, he had a very sensitive soul, and he struggled a lot. He had so much empathy for others and sympathy, and he took on a lot, I think more than he could handle at that age. And he did get involved after his father and I divorced. He did get involved with some drugs, and he went through some struggles with addiction. He went through a rehab program, an outpatient program, which he researched. He wanted to make sure that he did what he felt was best for him, and he would have the best outcome. And so his research led him to an outpatient rehab program, which he went through, and he was doing extremely well. Once he got through that program, he got his degree in business management and administration, and he became an investment analyst. And he did extremely well at that. He consulted me on a lot of that because of my business experience. And, he just was shining and happy and himself. You could see his face lit up, and he just was back to himself. And then one evening, we went out for dinner to our favorite pizza place, and Aaron was considering buying a house to renovate. He liked the idea of investing in real estate property and upgrading it. So we had a whole discussion on that, and who he could consult. And 3 days later, he was gone, and that was our last conversation. We exchanged some text messages. He told me he was having trouble sleeping. He told me he took a sleeping pill, and Aaron knew a lot about pills and things because of his prior experience with addiction. Mm-hmm. And we had many conversations about, pills and drugs and things. And I thought he knew very well what he was doing. I also knew that he had a prescription for sleeping pills because I had seen them. Mm-hmm. So my assumption was he took one of his sleeping pills. And when, there's still a police investigation going on with his accident. He actually died in a fall. There was fentanyl involved. And there's still an investigation going on about it. So I don't have a lot of details on the actual incident, the physical incident of Aaron's transition. But since then, Aaron has described to me in detail his actual transition. And that I write about in my books as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when was this that Aaron passed?
September 22nd of 2019.
Okay. So very recently. Yeah.
Yeah, very recently. So it's surprising, and a lot of people find it surprising that I not only wrote one book, but I've written 2 books about it. And I have to say, Aaron is writing these books. My writing is all channeled from Aaron. I've never written a book before in my life. I had no idea what I was doing. All of this is his guidance.
Wow.
So
that's incredible. And I can see why you titled the book Aaron's Energy, because it does take a lot of energy to put out one book, let alone 2 books when you're in grief. And I know this anthology that you just recently released that we're going to talk more about later. I've seen how much energy you put into that, and it's amazing. And people don't realize how much it takes behind the scenes, especially for you bringing this whole thing together. So it's clear that Aaron is driving you, I think, and guiding you and lifting you up, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. He started right from the beginning of his afterlife. So, we talk about the end of life. The end of life is the beginning of the afterlife. And right away, I received a written note from a friend of mine who claimed to have channeled Aaron. And she presented the note. She also contributed a chapter to Gathering at the Doorway. Mm-hmm. She presented me the note very soon after Aaron's funeral. And there were things in that note she couldn't have known. And she and I met when Aaron was a baby, a newborn. And she was expecting her newborn son. So we've known each other that long. Aaron was 31 at the time of his transition. Mm-hmm. And her name is Arlene. She's been a close friend of mine for years. And as a skeptic, I used to listen to all of her talk about, mediumship and contact with the afterlife, thinking, well, that's really nice if that is helpful for her. But of course, I didn't really absorb a lot of it because of my background in nursing and so forth. Mm-hmm. I was more of a skeptic, even though I had experience with patients who had NDEs, near-death experiences, and the stuff they reported to me was well beyond what anyone could imagine physically. Yet, as a nurse, and many medical people kind of boil it all down to a phenomenon of the brain, although that's since then, much more has been discovered about consciousness. But back to the note from Arlene, the next day after reading this note with information she couldn't have known, we had to meet with the detectives. One of the detectives said something that was literally word for word in Arlene's note, word for word. Of course, I forget everything else he said, So that was really the spark for me to begin opening my mind to the possibility that this did come from Aaron. And then very soon after that, on a drive up north, up in Canada, near where I live, in the fall, we have these beautiful fall colors on the trees. The leaves are red and orange and gold and beautiful in the fall. And I was marveling at them which I always do when we go on these road trips up here. I love looking at the leaves in the fall. Mm-hmm. As soon as I realized how beautiful this site was, I got hit with a tidal wave of grief that Aaron is never going to see this again. And as soon as I had that thought, I heard Aaron say to me, as if he was a passenger in the car. It wasn't telepathic. I heard it with my ears. Him say, "I do see it, Mom. I see the colors." Wow. But they don't look the same way they look to you. I see the energy that the leaves are emitting. I can't describe the colors that I'm seeing to you.
Wow.
That was my first instance of hearing him speak to me in his voice. And then it just started becoming a regular thing. And that's been since October of 2019. And at the time, I also had started reading books, books like yours and many other authors. And I found books to be such a comfort. This was a realm I had never expected to experience. And we all, especially as parents who lose children, we don't expect that's going to happen. And so why would we look into it and look at it, before it happens? So once it did happen to me, like you, I wanted to read more and more, and I wanted to learn more and more. And one author, more than one author, I apologize, recommended writing a journal of my experiences and my feelings. Well, it didn't take long before Aaron's messages overtook my journal. And then I started to realize that this is something I shouldn't be keeping all to myself. Originally, it was just for my own therapy, to write. But these messages started to seem that they might be helpful for other people. And I was also talking to other people about them and sharing them with other people. And as soon as I wouldn't they want to share an experience, similar experience with me? So I just thought, okay, this seems like this is going in the direction of publishing this. So I decided to do that. I decided, okay, I'll publish my grief journal into a book. Well, I thought, that was a big idea. Now, how do I do it? Right. So I Googled it. And the next thing I knew, I self-published my book on Amazon, KDP. And that was my first book, Aaron's Energy. I can show you. Can I show it to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cover.
Yeah.
This is the cover of my first book, Aaron's Energy. Mm-hmm. And, it says right in the beginning of my book, if one other person reads this and it helps them, I'll feel like it was worth doing. Well, more than one other person read it. And next thing I knew, Helping Parents Heal was interested in the book. And I was able to publish a second edition with an update with some more messages from Aaron and a longer recommended reading list. And I published the second edition of Aaron's Energy, which this is the cover.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yes, thank you. And that one is on Amazon and Amazon Smile for Helping Parents Heal. It is, and thank you for mentioning how nice the covers of the books are. Aaron's brother, Jonathan, did the cover art for all of my books in memory and in honor of his brother.
Yeah, well, it's awesome. Yeah, and they're great. They're great covers. As you were going through your story, I think it's interesting. You said, you were a nurse, a critical care nurse, but you didn't really, I guess, think much or believe much about the afterlife. And I know in the medical profession, people are not trained to think about the afterlife. In fact, it's kind of like drummed out of you. And I know a lot of doctors don't, but a lot of nurses actually do because they're the ones around the dying. So I'm curious as to what you thought about these NDEs and things when people told you about them.
Yeah, so that's a really good point that a lot of medical people, we are not trained about the afterlife, and especially in critical care. That's the last thing you're thinking about. You're thinking about saving your patient, and that's what you're entirely focused on. So, and that was me, I'm going to save this person, whether they like it or not.
Yeah, exactly.
And funny enough, some of them didn't really like it. And that's what they would report. They didn't want to come back. They liked it better where they were outside of their bodies, watching what was going on and telling us what happened. Like, how could they possibly know? And I would inevitably explain it away. I would listen to it. It's not like I dismissed it. It was that, yeah, I'm sure they believe this happened and their brain told them that it did.
Right.
But, I wouldn't think of it as necessarily something they really experienced in what my sense of reality was. Of course, my sense of reality has expanded way further since. So
yeah, and I think I want to. The thing is, I think we don't. We're all like that, and until something happens to us, we just kind of, we might hear about an ND and like, oh, those are cute stories, or yeah, I'm sure that they believe that happened, even though there's sometimes pretty incredible things that we can't explain. I'm reading Dr. Grace's book right now, After, where he talks about all these NDEs, and but we think, well, I can't explain that from my paradigm, from my sense of reality, so I'm just going to let it go. So what was your reaction when you audibly heard Erin's voice? Because I also want to express to people that's a very rare thing. A lot of us, we communicate with our children. I hear my daughter, but I've never heard her audibly.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey there, something I want to tell you about today. My podcast platform, Buzzsprout, has recently made it easier for me to allow you to support me financially. Go to www.grieftogrowth.com/subscribe. That's grief2growth.com/subscribe. And once you're there, you can sign up to support me financially. Now, you can do it for as little as $3 a month, or of course, as much as you'd like. If you do that, you'll get access to bonus episodes, and you'll see those in the regular feed. They'll have a lock on them. But when you become a subscriber, you'll actually get access to your own private feed, and you'll be able to listen to the regular podcast along with the bonus podcast for the subscribers. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for sharing the podcast. And I want to thank those of you who support me financially. Have a great day, and on to the episode.
Yeah, it was, first of all, I of course was stricken by it. Here I was facing a tidal wave of grief coming at me, and then instantly stricken and frozen by this voice. And I looked around the car, nobody else heard it. So my next instinct was, don't say anything. Everyone's going to think I've gone crazy. And I think I have too.
Sure.
How could that possibly be? This was not inside my head. This came from outside of my head. So now I'm thinking, that I'm hallucinating, Well, little by little, Erin was able to get through my thick skull and combine messages of his with signs. And the timing of those signs, I just couldn't explain that away. It was, what are the odds that Erin would tell me something right at this moment that this sign occurred? So I started to learn about synchronicities and the synchronicities with Erin's signs and messages and connect the dots. And I realized too, over time, he was slow dripping me with information, and one bit of information would build on the next. And so it started to, I don't want to say be a fun thing to, but I really started to look forward to his messages and his signs and anticipate them. And over time, I started to learn more and more what he was trying to relay to me, which is he's fine. He's in his afterlife. It's amazing he can't explain it fully to me, what his experience is there, but he's trying to let me know as much as he can possibly let me know about it so that I'm fine. Because the more fine I feel, the more readily his energy and mine can connect and can maintain that connection.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point for people to understand, is that there seems to be, and we use analogies because we don't know how it really is. So we say that they're at a higher vibration than we are, and that when we're at a lower vibration, that density of energy is harder, I guess, for them to penetrate, I think is a good analogy to use. So if we can lighten our vibration, we can make that connection more easily, which is something that's very difficult to do, in early grief. But there are also people that seem to be really, really good communicators from the other side. And we don't know why, but there are people like Aaron that just seem to just really be able to have an energy that gets through pretty easily.
Yeah. And, it's funny because he doesn't really explain that part of it to me. Like, why does his energy get through to me so readily and so easily, compared to some people who feel that they're not hearing from their loved ones or getting any signs. He kind of, again, this is likely something that he can't describe to me, because if he could, I'm sure he would. Mm-hmm. It's just way beyond what I would be able to understand. And he tells me that too. Mom, you'll never get this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'll tell, he'll explain as much as he can. He talks a lot about energy. And that's the reason my first book is called Aaron's Energy. He talks about physics and metaphysics. He talks about energy compatibility and incompatibility, and how certain energies are more compatible. So certain energy is drawn towards certain energy. You talk about vibration. He talks about that more in he uses the word moving. It's moving. It's moving at varying rates, he says. Mm-hmm. And therefore, certain energy is more compatible to meld with. He talks about how our loved ones can check in on us. He talks about how animals are easier and more compatible energy for spirit energy, because their energy is less complicated. They operate on instincts. They don't think and, have the same level or vibrational level that we have. Mm-hmm. It's easier to get through their energy. And he says their eyes are our eyes, their ears are our ears. He says they like birds because birds can get to places easier. So a bird has less obstructing it from, if they want to come and check on us, there's always a bird nearby, and that bird can get here fast and even drop a feather, to let us know they were there. And so he talks a lot about, also how young children have less complicated, complex energy that's easier to meld with, and they can connect easier with as well. So he describes to me how that's why young children are more in touch with the other side and with their past lives and so forth, because their energy isn't so focused on physical existence. Mm-hmm. They're still adapting. They're developing adaptation to physical existence independently, but at that stage of development where they're still young, they have more capacity for those connections.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that all makes sense from the little that we know. And I just said we can only use analogies, but we do understand things like energies and frequencies and things that are in harmony or out of harmony. We can understand like analogies like radios. If we have a radio, we tune it to a certain frequency, we can hear what's on that frequency, but we can't hear what's on the other frequency. But I know sometimes we think, we feel like we should be able to understand anything, but people that have had NDEs, they'll come back and they'll say, I understood all this when I was there, but now that I'm back in this body, I can't explain it to you because my brain can't handle it.
Exactly. And I had an OBE. I'm not even sure if it was an NDE. I was 5 months pregnant with Aaron.
We'll get back to Grief to Growth in just a few seconds. Did you know that Brian is an author and a life coach? If you're grieving or know someone who is grieving, his book, Grief to Growth, is a best-selling, easy-to-read book that might help you or someone you know. People work with Brian as a life coach to break through barriers and live their best lives. You can find out more about Brian and what he offers at www.grieftogrowth.com, www.growth.com, or text growth, GROWTH, to 31996. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit www.patreon.com/grieftogrowth, www.patreon.com/GRIEF, to make a financial contribution. And now, back to Grief to Growth.
And all of it, I had a high fever. I don't know, I had some kind of infection. And I suddenly left my body. I was floating above it, looking down at it, and not that interested in hanging around my body at all. I refer to my body as it, not me. And there I was, looking around the room for escape routes. And I contemplated escaping, going out through a tunnel of light, out anywhere I wanted in the universe. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go. And I took one last look at my body there, and I noticed, oh, it's pregnant. As soon as I had that thought, it's pregnant and maybe this isn't good for the baby for me to not be in it, I got, sucked back through that tunnel into my body. And I was still a skeptic, thinking, okay, that was my brain doing that.
Yeah.
But years later, when Aaron was about 4 or 5 years old, he was sitting in his car seat in the back of the car, and he blurted out, "Remember when we were together a long time ago?" Yeah. You remember, Aaron? When do you mean? Oh, a really long time ago, way before the dinosaurs. And we could travel around the universe anywhere we wanted. And I was, oh my goodness, he was 4 or 5.
Wow.
And I thought, is he remembering something from my OBE?
Wow.
We were in that together.
Wow. Yeah. And it's funny because I think we all, as we look back, and as you said, as our visions of reality start to expand, we look back into things in the past and go, oh, maybe that's what that was. My girls, they were about 7 and 4, I think, and we were sitting at the dinner table, and they made a comment about, we remember being in heaven and choosing you as our parents. Oh, and my wife and I were both like, well, we never taught anything about pre-existence. That was something they did not get from anybody around us. And we kind of, at the time, it was really interesting. But now, knowing what I know, I'm like, as you said, I truly believe that children up into the age about at least 5 or 6, they're still way more connected to the other side, because what we call the veil now, which is what keeps us alive, our ego, whatever you want to call it, we focus so much on this world that all gets blocked out.
I 100% agree with that. And that's what I've been hearing from Aaron, and pretty much everything I know starts from Aaron. I can actually look up in textbooks I never would have opened before, like a physics textbook, and find something that he's told me about. And some of it, I'm sure it isn't even, in physics textbooks, because a lot of what's around us, we can't even see or measure with instruments or really research.
Well, it is interesting because we want to be rational and scientifically minded and stuff. And people might hear this, and the term woo-woo comes to mind. People are like, oh, they're just talking woo-woo stuff. But the thing is, our physics is starting to catch up with some of this stuff. We're starting to understand things about quantum physics and quantum entanglement. I mean, Einstein hated that idea. He's like, this doesn't make any sense at all, but we know it's true now. There could be a particle on one side of the universe, if you want to use that term, and a particle on another side of the universe. And what you do to this particle immediately impacts the other particle at a distance that we can't even comprehend. And of course, we have no idea how that works.
No, but it's something that we can demonstrate, and that can be measured. Actually, apparently there are certain camera lenses that can photograph that, actually. So we know it happens. We know by inference, by reference, how much of the universe is actually unseen, dark energy, dark matter. We know that exists. That's apparently something like 95% of the universe. We don't possess the cells in our eyes to see, so we don't know it exists, yet it shows us all the time that it exists. For instance, black holes, the event horizons, and Aaron showed me. He talked a lot about black holes and showed me an event horizon, actually, which I didn't know what it was. But
I don't know what it is. So if you would explain to me what that is.
So if you look up black holes on Google or any source, they often show a photo of a ring of light around the black hole called the event horizon. And what that is that's all the light that is surrounding the black hole. But in the black hole, light cannot emit, okay, because of the gravitational forces in that sucking the light particles in. Only the light particles that are bouncing away from it or not getting sucked into the black hole are able to emit light, and that's what that ring is around them. Well, when Aaron described his transition to me, he showed me that. And because, he didn't show me his transition for a long time. He waited until I was ready. And it takes a long time to get through that really thick fog of grief before you're ready to actually hear about that. And when I was ready, that was when he knew to tell me, and he showed me. He actually sometimes he shows me in visual images in my mind. He said that he woke up and it was completely dark around him. There was no light, but suddenly he showed me a circle of light. And funny enough, it's almost July 4th. And those sparklers that we used to play with, and we'd spin them in circles and they would create that ring of light. That's what it looks like. And he said that since that was the only thing there, he went towards it. And the closer he got, he was absorbed into it. And in that light were people he knew who had already crossed over. And so later on, when he started talking about event horizons around black holes, and I looked it up, sure enough, there was that ring of light again.
Wow.
Yeah. And I wondered at the time, was he telling me that he's just in another part of the universe we can't see, but it's there. It's right all around us.
Right. Yeah. As you're saying that, because I'm reading this book about near-death experiences right now, and a lot of people describe a tunnel. And it was funny because when Bruce Grayson did his breakdown of NDE, he did like an inventory of NDE things. He left the tunnel out because he said people describe it as a tunnel depending on their culture, because some people have tunnels and some people don't have tunnels. So one guy described it as a tailpipe. So the way it sounds like this might be something that people, if they see a ring of light and they're being drawn towards it, it would give the perception of a tunnel.
Yeah. And my OBE, it was a tunnel. When I returned, I knew it was because the light was going the opposite direction. All the little particles of light I was, rushing past. So, but possibly, depending on what vantage point you're at in that phase of transition, it
Right.
may look like a tunnel, or it may look like a circle, a ring of light, like Aaron showed me.
Right. I think it depends on perception, and also like your past experiences. So, you now that when you see it or when I see it, we might think of it as a black hole or as an event horizon, because now we have that in our vocabulary. But as a parent, a lot of times when our kids transition, we think the worst. We think, were they alone? Were they scared? Were they in pain? And our mind always goes to the worst situation. So it's good that you had that comfort, that knowing that he was okay.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi there. I'm really excited to tell you about my latest ebook. It's 4 lessons that you can learn from the near-death experience without going through all the trouble of dying to learn them. I've been studying NDEs for several years now. I am completely convinced that not only are they 100% real, but that there's some very universal wisdom that we can get from the near-death experience. And I've distilled that down in this book into 4 short lessons. And I've also given you all the reasons why I believe that NDEs are absolutely real. So go to www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons to pick it up for free. www.grieftogrowth.com/NDE lessons. I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very grateful. I know not everybody has an experience like I have, but I also knew from Aaron to share it, and he encouraged me to share. He's been encouraging me to share, and he's in my opinion, it's validation for everyone. If I experience this is what Aaron's telling me. This is to tell everyone so they get the experience too. He's able to tell them through me.
Right. And there is, I think there can be, people can take comfort or should take comfort from other people's, stories as well. Because again, I know parents who have children who have overdosed or had, and fentanyl is so common now, whether
Terrible.
It's intentional or unintentional. It's just killing so many kids. And again, parents, think the absolute worst. And we want to know the answer to this question. But I have a lot of friends that are mediums, just like you do. And I've got friends that say we never die alone. My one friend says, just like you're not born by yourself, you don't die by yourself. It's like, even if you might have been in the room by yourself physically, there's always someone there on the other side, kind of like midwives, welcoming you.
Yes, and Aaron said essentially the same thing to me. Where did they come up with "you're born alone"? How can you possibly be born alone?
Right.
Well, you don't ever die alone either.
Yeah, it's just a transition. So it's really great to have that comfort. And I really appreciate you sharing it, because we get these messages and we can keep them to ourselves, but you talked earlier about how, once we start sharing these things, you can see other people's faces kind of light up. And then suddenly they're like, oh, maybe it's okay for me to share my story.
Absolutely. And that was what was happening. And one day, Aaron planted that in my mind. You're going to write another book. But this time, the book isn't just going to be about my story with Aaron. It's going to be about a lot of people's stories. So I started talking about it with people who I had spoken to, prior. And, I had enough interest in it. I had a small handful of people, and we thought, okay, let's do this. Let's put a book together. We'll each write our individual stories, and all these stories will help validate other people's stories and encourage other people to share. Well, one day I posted to my little group about it, and next thing I knew, a lot of people were jumping in with interest. And within no time, there were over 40 people interested in sharing their stories, and it became gathering at the doorway. And the subtitle is An Anthology of Signs, Visits, and Messages from the Afterlife. And these are stories, varying stories from a variety of people around the world with different backgrounds, different beliefs, different upbringings, who all share that part of their stories in common: the signs, the messages, and the visits that they receive from across the veil in different ways, but they're validating that they are receiving them. So I just think this is wonderful. And since the book was published, it just came out on Mother's Day this year. Mm-hmm. The feedback I'm getting from so many more people who have started to read the book, and they want to share their stories. So they write me their own stories.
Yeah. Well, let's do some name dropping, because it's a pretty impressive list of people you've got in the book. So tell us who some of the people are. And I know there's a lot of people that have written forewords and endorsements. So talk about that.
Well, I'll drop your name first then, Brian. And, of course, I had been following you before, and the fact that you joined in and contributed your chapter about Shayna, your beautiful light and beautiful daughter, who is behind you in the photo I see. Mm-hmm. I'm just so grateful, and such an incredible addition to the book. Suzanne Giesman wrote a beautiful foreword for the book. Sandra Champlain also. Robert Ginsburg, from the founder of Forever Family Foundation. And, a variety of people from varying losses. For instance, Jan Warner, who wrote the book Grief Day by Day, wrote mm-hmm. about her experiences, her personal experiences after losing her husband. Jane Asher Rainey, who wrote a book called The Next Room, she also contributed a chapter about her messages and conversations with her mother in spirit. Elizabeth Boisson and Mark Ireland, the co-founders of Helping Parents Heal, a group I'm very deeply grateful for, and you're also involved with on their board and as a caring listener. They contributed chapters, Elizabeth's about her son and daughter in spirit, and Mark about his son. Dr. Mark Pitstick from the Soul Phone Foundation contributed a wonderful chapter, and there's over 40 authors.
And I know it's we don't want to leave anybody out. I hope no one's offended, because you can't go through all of them, but I just wanted you to give us kind of a smattering of people, because I really, Camille, as I said, first of all, I want to thank you for putting this together, because I saw how much work you put into this and how much energy it took, and I know what it's like trying to get people together and publish it, and I think it's going to be it's a great resource. I mean, when I do grief work with people, I'm always looking like people like, well, what can I give to someone? And the thing is, to be really frank, the book can be overwhelming because it's so big. Yeah. But the great thing is, every story stands on its own, but it also fits together as one piece. So you can pick it up and just read a chapter. You don't have to read it in order. You don't have to read the whole thing. But just to know that, first of all, you're not alone. If you're not getting signs, and know that people are getting signs, and also what are signs, what are signs, and what are synchronicities, because we get them sometimes and people don't recognize them.
All the time. A lot of times people assume the signs they're going to see, and they miss the signs that actually are given to them. Mm-hmm. They're focused on what they're expecting rather than on what their loved one sends. And our loved ones are each as much individuals and unique as we all are, and they contact us in their own unique ways. So being open is really important. But the point you made about the book being very thick, over 40 chapters, I am hearing from a lot of people that they'll look through the table of contents, and a chapter title will jump out at them, and that's where they start the book. And maybe they put it down and they pick it up later. They read another chapter. Some people read one chapter a night. And the other thing people are really appreciative of is that each author's bio and contact information and websites and if they've written books. Not all of our authors have ever written a book before, but many have. Those are at the ends of each chapter. And if a person finds that a chapter or some chapters resonate with them and they want to seek out further information from one of our authors, it's all right there in the book for them. They can easily, their websites are right there. Yeah. So a lot of people are appreciating that because, like you said, they don't have any prior experience and something resonates with them or rings a bell for them. And especially they find that particular author is someone they'd like to follow. So they're able to do that.
Yeah, like I said, that's why I think it's a great reference. I mean, I think it's a great thing if someone says, if I had to give, and I'm always looking for that one book for somebody. It's like, what's the one book to give to somebody when they're going through this? And I think it's a great book for that because, as you said, you could start anywhere. And I've had so many times with people that said, well, I don't get any signs. I don't, because you're like, okay, for me, they think it's just a dream visit or it's just feathers. And having these different ways that our loved ones communicate with us. And you talked about earlier, the note from the person that was channeling Aaron and then getting the message from the detective, a little bit later on. We also have to keep in mind our loved ones, they're not bound by time, or at least not by our time. So sometimes, to me, the most fun, the most amazing signs are the ones where they'll tell us something's going to happen in the future, or they'll drop a hint about something that's going to happen in the future. And we have no idea how that works.
We have no idea how time works except within our frame of reference. But Aaron talks a lot about how time is a dimension in of itself, where he is. Things happen. They don't just happen in a certain place. They happen in a certain time. So it's not about where they are. It's about when they are. And he tells me that energy is the source of creation. And so everything in our universe is created from energy. That includes us. And where they are, they can create. They have the ability to create their own experiences anytime they want. So they can be creating something that's to us might seem like it's in our past, but it's in their present. And so he says that love is the source energy of creation, and everything is created from love. And we are created from love, all of us. And we have the ability, we have a special ability in the matter state, physical state of matter that we're in to create, because we have brains, we have hands, we have tools for creation, words, we have thoughts. So it's very interesting when you think about energy being the source of all that's created, and they're at another level of energy than we are, and their abilities to create are well beyond ours.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as we were sitting here talking, I was thinking about one of the synchronicities that I got, and it just still blows my mind to this day. I listen to podcasts all the time. So I go for a walk every morning and listen to this podcast, and this person said, one of the signs my daughter gave me after she passed is like, I would be out somewhere and someone will walk up to me and say, I knew your daughter, and they would introduce themselves. And I'm like, well, I never thought of that as a sign. Doesn't sound like a sign to me, but I'm like, so this idea is playing in my head. I'm going for a walk that day, same route I walk every single day. And I get to this one point, I see this woman walking down her driveway towards me, and I wear earbuds, so I'm not really paying attention. I'm like, she's approaching me. So I take my earbuds out and I'm like, hi. And she says, hi. She goes, I'm Nicole and I'm Morgan's mother. And your daughter, Shayna, was in Girl Scouts with my daughter. I see you walking by here every day. So this morning I just thought I'd introduce myself to you. I had walked the same route for a couple of years at least, and she had never said anything to me. But that morning I heard that podcast, and then she came out and introduced herself. I'm like, this is weird.
Oh, yeah. Very well. Okay. So that is a synchronicity. That is definitely a synchronicity. And things like that happen all the time to me. And it just happened because that happened to me yesterday. And
oh, wow.
You're telling me about it today.
Wow.
So there you go.
Wow.
Yes, where I wasn't even thinking about it. And someone came up to me and said they knew Aaron. And you don't think about exactly. You don't think that's a synchronicity when it happens. You find out later. And here we are.
It's crazy. I've got goosebumps just thinking about this because I don't know why I told you that story. And this is the thing I'm saying. We don't. And so the engineer in me wants to analyze it. It's like, okay, did I heard that podcast, and then did Shayna put that thought into her head so that she walked out that day, and then did she put that thought into my head? So I tell you the story right now. And the fact is, it doesn't matter how it works. It's kind of fun to ponder it, but this is the thing that a book like this can help people understand is like the things that we just dismiss as just ordinary things. They're not. There's divine timing in everything, and we just every once in a while we pick up on it.
Absolutely. And like you said, it doesn't. Aaron says the same thing that you're saying. It really isn't all about how we look at things. It's about that we look at them and how we feel, because spirit energy communicates with us through our feelings. And, when you were telling me your story, your synchronicity, and I'm like the feelings in me, it's like, I was just getting all goosebumps and all excited to tell you, I have a synchronicity with your synchronicity.
Yeah.
And this is really how the universe works.
Yeah. And I think that's another really important point. And it's especially for someone like myself who is as left brain and analytical as I am. And I've just learned this over the past 7 years. Shayna's anniversary was this past Friday. So it's been 7 years. But it's about feelings. It's about feelings and emotions. It's not about thoughts. And that's hard, I think, for a lot of us in the Western world. A lot of people consider themselves rational. And I've come to the conclusion, it's like feelings are not like less than intellect or rational. They're actually above. It's actually beyond. So our feelings can take us beyond that. And sometimes we just have to trust and trust that feeling.
I fully agree with that. And, the fact that thoughts are secondary to feelings. You have the feeling first, and then you have the thought, trying to figure out what your feeling was and try to define it in some way. So you're right. Feelings are our first form of communication, and feelings are energy.
Yeah.
So, where that energy is coming from, we don't know, but it's coming from all around us all the time. It's flowing through us all the time. And our kids, our loved ones who are part of that energy are part of us all the time in that way too. And they feel our feelings. That's how we communicate with them, through feelings.
Yes. And I think that I do want to belabor that point, because a lot of times I hear people say, I'm not hearing from my loved one, whether it's my child, my husband, my whatever that has passed. And it's like, it's because you're not feeling, you're not leaning into those feelings, you're not relying on them. And I realize that they're very subtle. So someone asked me the other day, they said, do you talk to your daughter? And I'm like, well, I talk to her every day. I mean, literally I talk to her every day, but I've had to learn that a lot of times what I'm hearing from her, unlike you, it's not in her voice. And it's not from outside my head. It's like, she's part of me. She's like in me. So it comes more from inside me than it comes from outside of me. And so I have to lean into that and trust that, because that's the way they communicate with most of us.
Yeah. And that is, even to feel them as a part of us is even a higher level of connection. Aaron, it did get to that. In the beginning, when I was hearing him from outside my head, I think my grief feelings were, getting in the way a lot of the time. And you know what? He said to me, it's okay. Have your grief feelings. They're normal. You're supposed to feel grief. That's a part of love. But he also said, if I really need to tell you something, I really need to get to you. He said, I can get to you like I did through a friend. I can get to you through a bird. I can communicate with you in other ways. I think when we get to that point you're at where you feel your daughter as a part of you, your feelings, you're fully melded with each other. You're fully connected at that point.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. And it's something, frankly, as we're talking about it, it's just really starting to hit me, because we tend to want what other people have. So a lot of us will say, I've heard people like this, I like to have an NDE. It's like, well, no, you wouldn't. Talk to anybody that's had one. You do not want to have an NDE. But, I like to get a dream visit, if we don't have dream visits. Or I wish I could hear that audible voice. And I've said in the past, I wish I could feel my daughter touch me. I've heard people say that or stuff like that. And we all kind of want that thing that we don't have. And I think we sometimes have things upside down. And I think as we start to merge with them, melt with them, I like that. Because I was thinking the other day, I was walking, I'm like, I haven't found a feather in a long time. I haven't found a dime in a long time. I found a dime the day before Shayna's anniversary, but before that, it had been a long time. And I think as we start to make that connection, they're like, okay, well, they don't need that as much anymore. They don't need those external signs.
Absolutely. They don't need those external signs as much, because your communication as one, you're both having the same feelings together. You're so connected. But also, when Aaron tells me that, they will send you those external signs as well. You have to watch for the timing of them. What's happening at the time, And the other thing he says to me is ask for them.
Right.
You need to ask and you have to ask sometimes a lot for signs. And sometimes I ask him for a specific sign. Aaron, can you send me this specific sign, a feather, a dime, or something like that? And guess what? Well, he sends me a very specific sign, but it wasn't the dime or the feather, but it was always something so extraordinary, that I forgot about the sign I asked for, and he sent me an even better one. And I've been able to even get some of those on photos of those on my phone, and those are pictures of those are in the book too. And other authors who have been able to get photos of signs that have occurred for them are also in the book, and some of them are just like unbelievable when you see them. Wow.
Yeah, actually, that reminds me, I need to see if I can find it. I'm sure I can find it somewhere, because one day I was on my phone. I have a podcast, and every podcast cover in my phone had changed to this picture of Shayna. It's a picture of Shayna, one of my favorite pictures of her, where she's like at these building blocks. And I'm like, how did that happen? And I was freaked out, because I thought it had changed like in the database, like at Apple's level. So I went and I looked from my computer, and it wasn't that way from my computer. It was only on my phone. And then I went back to my phone later on, and they were back to the way they normally were. I'm like, okay, how did this happen? I want to know, but I'll never know. But it was weird.
Okay, if you want to call it weird, sounds to me like that was a sign. And What was happening at the time? What were your thoughts at the time? Were you thinking of Shayna at the time? It's just, that's an important part of it. And a lot of people recommend to write it down, because we forget, especially with our grief brains. Forgetting is a big part of grieving, and part of the reason I started journaling Aaron's signs and messages to me so I wouldn't forget them. And so writing them down, not just the sign itself, I got this as a sign, but what was happening at the time. And then you can really start connecting the dots to figure out the messages.
Yeah, exactly. And the journaling is really important, I think, for a number of reasons. One is because of grief brain, which is real. People will go through that and they're like, I'm losing my mind. It's like, no, that's a part of what we go through. We forget things and things don't really register. But the other thing is we tend to think, oh, it's been forever since I've gotten a sign. I never get signs. I don't get them anymore. And it's good to be able to go back and look. And I get reminded because I do this all the time. So as I'm talking to you, I'm like, oh yeah, there was that. And there was this and there was that. So we can say, yeah, it's really easy to forget about them, especially when we get into our funky states, that we forget how much they do care for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's an amazing sign you got. Just amazing.
Yeah. So, the book, I know it benefits a lot of charities. I want to talk about some of the charities and I love the way you told the story at the beginning about Aaron tying it together with the fact that he's such a giving soul and that you're giving the proceeds of this book away. And so it's not only doing good because it's helping people who are reading it, but it's also helping other people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, there was no doubt in my mind, when I wrote my first book, that I would give the proceeds of book sales to charities that Aaron would have supported in his lifetime. Mm-hmm. And that's how it started. It started that way. And when I discovered Helping Parents Heal, I felt that I was led there by Aaron. Mm-hmm. I just have come such a long way forward in my grief journey as a result of finding Helping Parents Heal. And I do believe our kids guide us. I do believe our loved ones guide us. And a lot of the times you have to look back and say, oh, well, how did I even get here? And it becomes obvious. Mm-hmm. So, anything that I feel that relates to Aaron and something that he's guided me to, I give the proceeds to. And I discovered Forever Family Foundation as well. I found their podcasts, and it's interesting. We have another synchronicity in common with We Don't Die and Sandra Champlain. And Sandra Champlain's podcast was the first podcast I ever listened to. I never listened to podcasts before Aaron transitioned. Yeah. And I found them, and that was the first one. And, so that led me to find another one and another one and another one, and to find books through most of the podcasts I listen to are done by authors like yourself. And so finding my way through this journey, I believe I've been totally guided by Aaron through it. Yeah. And I also believe that all the connections I've made with the authors in the book are guided by, not just by Aaron to me, but by their loved ones, and it just keeps growing.
Yeah, I know some people that might be a new concept to them, that, our loved ones are guiding us. And I remember not too long after my daughter transitioned, I was talking to one of my cousins, and she said, Shayna is your ancestor now. And I'm like, I don't like that idea. But I've come to realize that, yes, when we cross into spirit, we become part of. I was interviewing someone the other day, and the podcast hasn't come out yet, but she calls it the ancestor realm. So we go into that ancestor realm where we're back to our higher, fuller selves, and they have a different perspective. It's not that they're better than we are, but they just have a different perspective. Their eyes are opened up again, so to speak. So they do guide us and they do lead us. And I know in Helping Parents Heal, we talk about this all the time. Our kids are helping us make these connections. And, here I am 7 years on, and the first podcast I listened to was Sandra Champlain. I've been on her podcast, I think 3 times now. And I never thought that would be. And it was funny because I was at a conference with her several years ago at AREI, and she came up to me and she goes, "Oh, I've been following you." She said, "I want to have you on my show." And I'm like, that's weird. I'm surprised she knows who I am. Turns out she thought I was someone else. So I was so disappointed, but I ended up being on her show later on when she realized, she finally got to meet me. And so that was a pretty interesting way that turned out.
That's a great story. And you know what? I think even more evidence that you were guided to each other. And, during the writing and compiling of our anthology, I was saying we have a book club across the Vale cheering us on, and it's a stadium full of souls. And I do believe that. I believe they're a team. They're a team, and our kids are all a team, and our loved ones are all a team, and they team up with our guides, and they team up with, whatever energy is necessary to show us the way,
Right.
and we can choose whether or not to follow it.
Right.
And I'm really glad that for everyone that has chosen to follow it, because I think we've all done something really remarkable and taken the lead on encouraging others to share. And I think the more we share our stories, the more comforted we feel. And also the more we break down barriers between people, we open doors. And I think we also draw ourselves closer to our loved ones. We're kind of thinning the veil, or the door. The book's called Gathering at the Doorway. The door keeps opening wider, and when we get that door open wide enough, we'll see a huge crowd across the other side of it.
Yeah, I think again, I think the work that you're doing in this book and your books are so important, because another thing about grief is we feel alone. We're in a world for people. And again, especially for us, I think parents who have lost children, we feel like, okay, this has never happened to anybody else. This is what we feel. No one else has to go through this. It's just me. And the thing is, we're never alone. Literally, we're never alone. Whether it's people on the other side of the veil, people on this side of the veil. And if you open yourself up to just looking around and open up to the possibilities, people will come into your life. It's funny because I don't know about you, but like I lost people in my life when Shane had transitioned, people that I thought were close to me. And that seems to be universal. But then people came into my life I never dreamed would come into my life.
Oh, me too. And I am so grateful. I think both of us would agree we'd rather not have had a reason for any of this. And it was fully unexpected. Nothing a parent ever expects, but to be able to have gratitude, I also wouldn't have expected if it wasn't for the people that came into my life. And I do believe that Aaron brought me to these people, and, they've become close friends of mine for a very unexpected reason. And life is full of changes. We're all going to experience loss. Whether or not we're going to grieve loss, I think, is dependent on how deep our ability to love and how deep our love is for those people. So, I guess I hadn't experienced a loss like this until Aaron's transition to know what can be beyond it. Right.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, if we're here long enough, as you said, the only thing guaranteed in life is that there's going to be change. The other thing is guaranteed in life. If we're here long enough, we're going to be parted by death, by our death or the death of a loved one. That's just guaranteed. That's part of the deal. But there's certain transitions because of the timing of them. Again, losing a child is so unexpected and so out of order that I see that it changes the course of your. I tell people there's before Shane had transitioned and there's after. That is a demarcation in my life, and we can choose what we do afterwards. The growth is not inevitable. It doesn't just happen. We can choose it. But it's pretty amazing what our loved ones do to help us. And that's what like I said, I get from talking to you about, Aaron's energy and about gathering at the doorway, is it can open that door for other people to the possibilities to say, yeah, let me look out for this. Let me see what's available, what's out there.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And, I really do believe now that I've come to a point where I see Aaron in everything. you know, and in every new relationship I make, Aaron's a part of it. Our loved ones are there. They're all a part of it.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be otherwise, right?
Right. Well, it's funny because we've Helping Parents Heal. We've had one conference. It was 3 years ago, I guess now. And being in that gathering, I mean, it feels more like family than even friends. I mean, I would say we're more like family. And we're getting ready to have the conference coming up. We're recording this at the end of June, so it's coming up in a couple of months in August. And it's a club that none of us would have joined intentionally, but it's an amazing resource for people. So I'm always pushing. I'm on the board, but I don't get paid, so this is not like self-promoting. But it's just such a wonderful resource for people, and it's something that our loved ones put together, I believe.
I do too, and it's just it's a lifesaver for me. I don't know where I would be. And you're right. It is. People feel like family. It feels like one huge family, and our kids are family members too. Like we all know we know each other in a way other people don't.
Yeah. Yeah. There's an instant connection. Well, Camille, we're coming to the end of our time together. I want to make sure that people are aware of where they can reach you, find out more about Aaron's Energy. So if you could give your website and let's go over the names of the books again.
So my most recent book, Gathering at the Doorway, an anthology of signs, visits, and messages from the afterlife, is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and through Goodreads, also through hyperlinks at my website, www.aaronsenergy.com. You can see a full list of donation recipients, updates, events, and links to all of the authors as well are on my website. Aaron's Energy, my first book, is also available at all those sources, and it's also available in Audible.
Yeah, awesome. Camille, it's been great having you here today. Thanks for doing this podcast. Thanks for doing what you do. The book is a wonderful resource, and thanks for asking me to be a part of it.
Well, thank you, Brian. I can't express my gratitude enough for you and all of your work, and for being on your show.
That big red subscribe button and click the notify bell.
Thanks for listening to Grief to Growth. Brian hopes that you find this episode helpful and will come back for future episodes. Brian's best-selling book, Grief to Growth, Planted Not Buried, is a great resource for anyone who is coping with grief or knows someone who is. If you enjoy the podcast and would like to support it, there are 3 things you can do to help. The first is to share the podcast with someone that you think it will help. The second is to go to iTunes, rate, and review the episode. The third way you can support the podcast is by becoming a patron. Head over to www.patreon.com/grief2growth. That's patreon.com/grief, the number 2, growth, and sign up to make a small monthly donation. Patrons get access to exclusive bonus content and knowledge that you are helping to spread the message of grief to growth. For more about Brian and Grief to Growth, visit www.grief2growth.com.
Hi there. I hope you enjoyed this latest episode of the podcast, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. What questions came up for you? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I invite you to visit us at grieftogrowth.circle.so. That's grief2growth.circle.so to continue the conversation with me and with other listeners. It's a space to sound off, to share reactions, and to go deeper into the topics from the show. I look forward to chatting more, and I hope to see you there.